Hey guys, and welcome to my talk on scaling Meta and Google Ads with first-party data for lead generation. My name's Luke Nevill. I work at a company called Leadly, and as you may have expected, we operate in the lead gen industry, primarily in the financial services. So there's two key areas which we work in. So that's car finance, so anybody who needs to get finance or a loan to be able to afford a vehicle, or the claims industry, so wherever people are entitled to a claim legally because there's been an issue with their property or car or whatever it may be. We generate leads for solicitors to then be able to then run their process as well. So we're based in the UK. We run across all channels, so Facebook and Google being our main two, but then also TikTok and email, SMS, Taboola, SEO. So we try to control the entire digital funnel for our clients. Currently at about 40 clients in total as an agency with about 31 members of staff, I believe. And our media spend at the moment as it stands is about £2 million, £2 million across all channels. However, by the end of this month, we should probably be up at more like 4 million. So we've got a couple of big accounts which are really trying to scale. Which is where first-party data actually becomes even more important when we're getting into these sort of numbers. So we've actually doubled in size as well, like year on year for the last couple of years. So when I first joined, I think we were a team of 11, I think. And yeah, now we're up to like 30 odds. So it's been really interesting to see the growth. And yeah, the difficulties of sort of like growing as an agency is maintaining work quality as well. Because obviously when you hire more staff, you become less in touch, like in my case, with how people are managing their accounts. But we're doing quite a good job, I think, of making sure that everything's like methodological and scientific in the way that we actually operate. So like our average client, just to give you a little bit more background, is that our average client will typically stay with us for about 3 years. So the average in agency land is typically 3 months. That's quite a big difference. And there's sort of two key parts to it. Firstly, really good media buying, funny enough. Like that's everybody that's listening to this call. Secondly, really good account managing. So being able to actually educate the client on what's going on, why things are bad, why things are good, how we can scale, when we need to pull things back, like all of these other variables. Like lead generation, there's a lot outside of our control, which I'll be going into on this call. But the closer we work with our clients on understanding the intricacies of each step, the better our results end up being. So like our main KPI is our clients' ROI, really. So if our clients aren't making money, they're going to leave. So like a lot of lead gen agencies, or when you've got a lead gen account, it's very easy to just turn around and just go, yeah, we're only going to monitor and look after things by about the first, like to the lead itself, and then after that it's not our responsibility. However, that's not the way to go about it. But you should say, okay, I'm responsible for all of this stuff. So just to give you an example, I had one client, and we'll go through the statuses in a minute. I had one client once upon a time ago, probably about a year and a half ago, where their cost per lead was consistently around like the £10 mark, and which was just about on target to be able to then become profitable once they pay out. I then ran a new strategy, which I found, I think it's popularized by Tim Bird. It's a sniper strategy, I think is what it's called. And I managed to get their cost per lead down to like £5, £6. Like it was crazy. But I also launched a new campaign alongside it. That new campaign, it was just different messaging, it was different hook, it was different creatives, end up working really, really well. Client calls me and they're buzzing, going, God, I've seen how many leads we've got in. But then we gave it like 1 to 2 weeks to then start seeing that data mature. And then it didn't. And then even though the cost per lead is really good, the cost per paying customer was terrible. So just poor quality traffic. It's very easy for me to turn around and then just go, it's not my problem. but then our clients are going to leave. And the only way that we can ever have a good reputation is if we hold our clients' targets before our own. And the way that we typically operate anyway is we usually have performance models with all of our clients. So if our clients succeed and they want to spend more, we will always make more. So it's in our best interest to care about that entire funnel. So this is quite an important section to get your head around, and the importance of each step. And this is also going to impact your channel strategy as well, in terms of what events you're optimizing towards, etc. So every lead gen industry, like it could be for personal coaching, like as in personal training. So it could be health and well-being. It could be in the financial services. It could actually be part of the e-commerce flow with a higher order value purchase, where you're driving people to then actually inquire and discuss about whatever service that they're selling or product that they're selling. Regardless of that, every single one is going to have their own lead gen funnel. In our case, the most popular way of looking at things across all of our clients is generating a lead, which you can see is number one, generating an approval, which is whether or not the customer is fit to be able to then go and get a loan out, transferred, which is typically when it goes from the lead gen team over to the sales gen team, and then dealt, which is obviously paying customer. That's the typical workflow that we'll see for all of our clients. Some of them are actually a little bit shorter. Some of them don't have transferred in there. Some of them do. We've actually got in the claim side of things, you'll typically just have lead, and then you'll have new claim signed, which will be equivalent of dealt. So just 2 steps. So you have to map this out first. If you don't understand this bit, all the rest of your campaigns are probably going to fall down, because you've got to make decisions based off the data for each one. And then the most important questions, in my opinion, around these key events are: what is the time period between each status, and what's the average order value of a customer? So if I just go back to this slide, how long does it take for somebody to go from lead to approved, or approved to transferred, or transferred to dealt? Because you need to start working off averages to then start seeing if any sort of campaigns and stuff are actually a little bit out. And then obviously what's like the average order value is obviously important, because you need to know how much money they're making in order to be able to actually see what the return on ad spend is fundamentally. So for our clients, typically what we see is lead happens obviously on the same day when somebody clicks an ad and then fills in a form. Approval then happens like immediately. So there's an automatic process inside of our client's CRM. That all happens on the same day. Transferred, that's about 3 days on average, but it could be 1 day, could be up to 5 days. Dealt is then the difficult one, so 10 days time from the point of a lead, we'll then know whether or not on average they're going to become a paying customer. Some of our clients have got a lot more efficient processes, and they can actually see within the first 3 to 5. But some take 10 to 14. All depends on who the client is, what they're selling, and what their sales process looks like as well. The reason why these statuses are so important to try to get your head around is because if I tried setting up an event in Meta for Dealt, I would need to get 50 conversions over a 10-day period before obviously to exit learning inside of Meta, for example. And it's just going to take way too long. Like the data feedback loop is just so slow. So 10 days is just way too much. And then we just work back. So transferred, can we actually hit about 50 conversions? I think Meta's actually changing it to 10 soon, but that seems way too low for me. So can I actually optimize based off this 3-day number? Maybe. Depends on the size of the budget, because our average cost per transfer, you're talking about £100 to £150. So obviously, to be able to then get 50 conversions of that per week, you're talking quite big budgets that the client's going to have compared to what maybe they do actually have. which then just leads lead and approved, which is very important to then be able to testing what the differences are between these two events. So just in relation to obviously this overall summit, like first party data and event optimization is critical. So you can see inside of this particular account, this is done by CustomerLabs. Inside of Meta, we have 9.2 out of 10. It's not necessarily about how high that number necessarily is. And I don't know if Vishnu will agree with me here, but from my understanding is if you actually had, let's say, a 6 out of 10, but you had the Facebook click ID being passed through, that'll be better than maybe an 8 out of 10 without the Facebook click ID. Only reason being is a Facebook click ID or TikTok click ID or Google click ID is unique to each individual. So you're never going to have a duplicate click ID between customers. So that's an easy way to be able to then actually determine, have we actually targeted a certain person? So yeah, like it's integral to know. And these custom events, obviously, that we're using inside of Meta, they have to come from right back here, is knowing this funnel. If we don't know this funnel, all we'd end up doing is optimizing towards lead. Yeah, we may get loads of cheap leads, but then we don't have anything after that. And then I've put here, ideally you want to optimize as far down the funnel as possible, but the event should ideally fire on the same day unless the budgets are really, really big. So if I just show you an example firstly of just that first party data and the quality of our match rates. So we had the Facebook click ID being passed through in both instances, just so you know, but we had an account which was really, really struggling. And you can see that the cost per lead, which is in the light pink on that graph, no, sorry, is the dark pink, sorry. You can see that the dark pink were at like £61, like crazy expensive. Like there's just, so using the lead event with a 6 out of 10, which you can see there, let me just start that bit again. That 6 out of 10 went up to a 9 out of 10. Creatives didn't change. Significant difference was moving to approved and getting the EMQ up to 9 out of 10. The way that we done that was, what we realized was on the form, we didn't actually have we use an iframe with our clients, and we had to have the customer ID in the URL on the thank you page in order to be able to match the data up, in order to be able to then send all of the variables needed inside of Facebook, which is why we were getting a 6 out of 10 to begin with. So we were just having loads of browser events sent, the occasional server event, but no way to match the data up from the front end and the back end. And you can see here, the light pink is the cost per lead, and then the dark pink is the cost per approval or approved. Using the lead event with a 6 out of 10, we were at £19.28 and then £61.63. Just for comparison, we should be at about a £10 cost per lead. That's like the average. And this should be more like £20 cost per approval. So this was just a couple of weeks after changing it. So you can see the cost per lead immediately dropped. And then the cost per approval then immediately dropped by 50% near enough. So like that's come down even further since I last created these slides. So that's going to be more like 24-ish now at the moment, compared to where we were. Like the client was not happy here. Like they were saying they can't keep burning through cash, understandably, because their cost per payout would never back out. Unless they had a crazy high approval to deal, but they definitely didn't. So this is kind of an indication as to, like, we only changed one thing here. Like, it's critical that you end up having if people talk about creative testing all the time, and I agree, creative testing is kind of fundamental, or media buying 101. However, you're not going to be able to do anything with a poor data setup, especially now that we're in this post iOS 14 era, where conversion API is near enough becoming like the only way to be able to track people. You need to be able to give the algorithm and the machine learning a chance to actually understand what we're after. Otherwise, you might as well just run a traffic campaign, which everybody knows isn't ever going to be ideal. So that's an example. So what I wanted to then do is actually spend a little bit of time on just giving you a campaign overview in terms of how do we structure our accounts for success. So obviously it depends on the amount of budgets that we've got. But if we talk about a mid-sized client, mid-sized for us will be about 10 grand a month, roughly. So we'll always use broad targeting. We're inside the special ad category for financial services. So we don't get the luxury of having lookalikes and like particular age brackets that we can target or genders, etc. Like we have to target broad because Facebook doesn't allow anything else. We can do 18 plus, 21 plus, or 25 plus, but can't do anything else. Like the best converting customers in this industry are typically about 35. So we don't get the luxury of being able to do that. So what we do is broad targeting to begin with, usually. We'll then have an exclusion list. So that would usually be all the sort of key metrics and some of their page engagement ones. So 180-day page visits, like lead, approved, transfers, dealt, all of them exclusions, just to make sure we're always hitting new pockets of audiences as much as possible on those conversion campaigns. Then we'll typically now have like one campaign as an Advantage Plus, optimizing towards approved with 6 to 8 ads within it. So if you asked me about a year and a half or 2 years ago, it would have been a regular lead gen campaign. But now we're actually using the sales campaign for Advantage Plus. And we're seeing significantly better results. You can't do it for the lead pixel. You can only do it for a custom event, which in our case is obviously approved. So that's what we'll typically have the campaign set up as. And then we'll also have the same thing with a cost cap standpoint. This cost cap standpoint only ever happens once we start generating enough of a result inside of here. And we've got some criteria to be able to hit before we then start introducing other stuff here. So initially what we want to be testing, I don't know if that's in here. Yeah, it is. I'll come on to then what we're actually going to be looking to test and why over time. But as you can see at the bottom here, Advantage Plus campaigns for lead using a metric from later down the funnel, significantly improved performance, I meant to say for sale. Most of our accounts now do this and it outperforms every other setup. That I really couldn't encourage anything more. Like that's probably been the biggest influential factor that we've actually seen is just those Advantage Plus campaigns moving away from traditional website lead campaigns. We also can't use lead forms in our industry just because Facebook doesn't have enough sort of privacy settings in order for us to be able to actually effectively use them in a compliant way, which is quite annoying because it'll be even better really if we could use on-platform lead forms. So once we launch our campaigns, what's our optimization process? So typically, like the most important part of as I said at the very beginning of this conversation, was we have to optimize towards deal. Like as in our end target KPI is the most cost efficient deal price that we can get. Then we just work backwards from there. So after that, it will then be the cost per transfer. Prior to that, it will be the cost per approval, cost per lead, and so on. But those metrics, which I just said, are outcome metrics. What we need to have is the input metrics that we can actually control. So that's what you can see on screen. So you've got click to lead, which is down here, lead to approval, so that's the approval rate, approval to deal, so that's how many go from approval to deal, or it could be approval to transfer if we have a transfer status in there. Got CTR and then CPM. Now, what you'll see inside of an account is maybe your CPMs have skyrocketed because it's Q4 and Black Friday's around the corner and everybody else has turned up their ad spend. It's not just CPM that therefore becomes the issue. It's usually relational. It's usually between two or more metrics. So usually it'll be a high CPM, then a low click to lead, for example, or it could be a low approval rate. You've got to try to look for those correlations. Usually we export all of our data into Looker, and then we'll then have all these comparison charts. So we can then look at the relationship between spend and all of these metrics that you can see on the screen. So as we scale spend, we can then start seeing what metrics are starting to come out of like the minimum targets or benchmarks that they need to be hitting. And all of these metrics that you can see on screen are ones that we can influence ourselves. So if I walk through each one, CTR, that'll be creatives primarily, the copy, the hook, the button, the targeting in terms of is it broad or is it interest, obviously the offer or service that we're actually selling, and the location where we're actually targeting it, and the type of customer that we're obviously doing. So are we appealing to the masses, or are we only appealing to plus 30-year-olds, plus 50-year-olds? Are we only appealing to men or women? All of these sort of factors are going to impact the CTR, and we need to do our best as being marketers to be able to then improve our testing process on this. CPM, this is a little bit trickier. Like, we kind of have indirect control. So obviously the campaign objectives that we set are going to be influential. So if you actually use a paid post engagement, you can expect your CPM to probably be like £2 to £3. But then if you're running a conversion campaign, it's probably going to be more like 6 to 7 if you're in the UK, that is. CPM, we have to look at, again, relationships behind different things. Maybe we've got copy, which we're running, which has got certain trigger words in there, maybe, which is causing the CPM to spike. Some of our accounts, for example, we can't say like the word finance inside the ad copy, otherwise the CPM goes quite high. So we want to try to be clever with our wording so that we can then try to get a lower CPM. Also, the signals that are obviously being sent back to Facebook, so that's where first party data comes back in. What's the quality of the data? You can expect your CPM to drop as your EMQ goes up, broadly speaking, unless they're having a bad experience on the landing page, which is then again another variable which is going to impact it. So are they getting stuck? Are hardly anybody converting? Are you getting loads of negative comments about your product or service? All of them things are going to be considered inside of a CPM. So there's no one way to easily identify what it is. It's more of a case of like what's got the biggest influential impact, and then work backwards from there. I've also got a copy of, I've got a document which has basically broken down every single test that you can run underneath each of those categories. So if you want it, just tag me inside of the community, which I think CustomerLabs have put together, and I will share that with you guys in there. But it's just something which we use internally as a bit of a training tool, just to conceptualize new creative ideas, new testing ideas in our head. So here's everything that we can control and everything that obviously goes into it. So just go through it again. So if we expand on CPM, you've got bidding strategy, creatives, bid amount, CAPI, page history, targeting objectives, external URL, seasonality, CTR, creatives, targeting, ad copy, product market fit, industry, seasonality, objective. Click to lead, so conversion rate, so that's ad congruency, load speed, messaging on the page, user experience, retargeting of the ads. Approval rate, which is lead to approval, that's the landing page content, the creatives on the copy, the ad congruency, campaign type, lender panel. So lender panel will be what our clients have. They'll have different lenders which can then offer different deals. If you've got more lenders, then you can then offer more different packages, and then therefore the approval rate hypothetically should be higher. Then you've got approval to deal, so sales staff, seasonality, quality of approval, vehicles being advertised, moving budgets to campaigns with better approval to deal. There's a lot there, and I could easily do a training on each individual section. Like bidding strategy, there's about 8 different ways, I think, that we run our cost cap and big cap campaigns. Creatives, there's a whole host of different ways that we can then look at creatives from a testing standpoint. Then all of the, like, there's so many, like, just to give you an indication on the creatives again as well, what we want to be able to do is understand where Facebook wants to spend our money, or where, what's it called, TikTok wants to spend our money. I'm going to come on to Google in a minute. If I launch an image ad, a video ad, carousel ad, collection ad, usually I'll do that in the very first steps of testing, because what we're going to find is there's going to be differences in terms of the quality of people who are converting on these different types of ads. So I have to classify that as an ad type. So the ad type will be image, video, carousel, collection. We have to test that at some point, and then we have to then duplicate whatever the winner is. Is it image? Is it video? If it is image, are we talking it's a winner on cost per lead or cost per approval or cost per deal? When you first launch an ad account, you have to be quite quick and you have to make assumptions, because deals are going to take, in our case, 10 to 14 days probably to mature. But we can't have the cost per lead and cost per approval going out of whack. So image, video, carousel, collection. And then on our side, we then have quite a few templated sort of creative styles to then go after, which usually work. But your creative style is then going to be something along the lines of your graphic design ads, your UGC ads, AI ads, your like product unboxing, unrevealing, like sort of content, testimonial content, memes, or even animations. So we have to test a variety of them, because you've got to think from a consumer standpoint. Every single metric that you see on the screen, like what we're talking about here, these only ever happen as an outcome of a human emotion. If I see an advert which is appealing to me, if I go back to that example ads, I think here, did you finance a car from 2007 is like the opening line. Have you ever had a car with, and then that's a company which people may have got their loan out with. If them answers are yes, that's going to be very important for me to then want to potentially click on. If I don't relate to this, if I've never driven and I see this advert, or if I've never heard of this company, so therefore I probably haven't ever had finance with them, I'm never going to click on it. But if I see this, and then you can see that there's an average refund of £4,000, if I see that, suddenly that now sort of triggers curiosity more so. Like, oh, am I entitled to £4,000? And this is why creative testing becomes so important, because each person will click for a different reason. I'm usually quite spontaneous. I'm quite impulsive, whereas some people need a lot of evidence and a lot of backup to be able to then actually consider clicking and then converting. So if I see a product, usually I'm quite gun-ho, and I'll click on it and then I'll just buy it without really considering too much, as long as it's obviously affordable. Whereas some people may have a look at it and then they'll go, actually, let's see what else is on the market. Oh, okay, there's a couple of competitors out there. Let's have a look at the reviews, and then they'll go and convert. Creative testing should be tackling all those different reasons as to why somebody converts. And again, I could easily do another whole training just on creatives. But I wouldn't want to, there's just not enough time for me to go through it. But yeah, after you've got your ad type and then your ad style from a creative testing standpoint, then it's all about the angles and the hooks. So quite a popular combination inside of our industry is images. Carousels usually actually work quite well. And then carousels with collages work even better. Collages being 3 or 4 or maybe 5 pictures of different vehicles on offer and at what sort of price based on whatever our criteria our clients have. That's usually quite a popular ad which goes out because there's lots of variety going on. but we can easily then start tweaking an image and a carousel and then a collage. We can now start writing ads in a billion different ways. So we can test the different vehicles. We can test the backgrounds on the vehicles, test the different price points depending on what vehicles are actually available, the models of the cars, the colours of the cars, whether or not we're speaking to men or women, whether or not we're speaking to mums or dads, whether or not we're speaking to, let's say, a business, like a young entrepreneur who's got to get around and got to drive about and see all their customers versus a mum who just wants to get their kids to school safely. All of these different things will influence the way that people click. Not the whole country does not operate in the same way. And it's our job as marketers to actually try to figure out what can we do, creatives, targeting, ad copy, to be able to then make things more appealing to our customers. Otherwise, we're just going to be banging our head against the wall. So, yeah, like there's a lot more that I could go through, but I want to try to stick to first-party data. If you want me to share any other, I've got some more documentation that I'll probably share inside the community chat. If not, just add me on LinkedIn, and then I will share anything with you that I may have. But yeah, really important to be able to go through the testing process there. Oh, consent mode, I will come back to. I think my slides have actually just been messed up here. So consent mode, this is just a friendly reminder really, because it's mandatory to have it set up. This is obviously now starting to touch on Google. But it's just a reminder. What this page was supposed to be, so I'll get it tweaked after, is this is a diagram of a breakdown chart which I use to train our team internally, and it's like a decision-making tree. So question 1 is, are the ads like profitable for the customer? If the answer is yes, do X. If the answer is no, do Y. And then you have to then work backwards from the top of the funnel. So if it's not, this question here, which comes after, will say, is the cost per approval within target? Again, yes, we'll say one thing, no, we'll say another. And then eventually it will then come down to an action point on where you need to actually now go and investigate. But I'll share this, like you can see there's a button here, so you can just click on that if you get sent these slides. But yeah, consent mode as well, very important to get on top of. Just touching back on creatives, so velocity, in my opinion, is extremely important. You'll probably hear this spoken about quite a lot on LinkedIn and discussions and stuff, but what we find is like some accounts which are doing really, really badly will have like a 5% success rate. Now, what I mean by success rate is if an ad has spent minimum 10 times the target cost per event, so if we're optimizing towards approval, it will be £20, so 2 times that will be £200. Like if we're only getting a 5% success rate, it means that you're only going to be having 1 in 20 ads be able to then be successful. So that means that you need to be producing at least 20 ads a week in order to be able to then actually get the result you desire. The best accounts that we have will hit around 15 to 20%. Because 1 in 5 is quite a realistic number. Anything higher than that, I haven't really ever seen. But it's better to have. I'd rather get less creatives into an account because that's obviously quite time intensive for the creative team and the media buyers uploading the ads. I'd rather have a higher success rate and lower number of creatives. But the minimum, like in this case, if you have got a 15 to 20% hit rate, 1 in 5 ads will be a winner. Those winners may fatigue as well after 3 to 4 days. So you're going to be needing at least 20 to 30 new ads in the account per week. When I say by new ads, it's not completely brand new concepts. It's iterations of those concepts. So maybe you've got a video with a UGC person. Maybe it's just testing the script. So So you're just iterating the script, or maybe you're just changing the model, or maybe you're just changing the music that's on in the background. But you need to have all those variations in order to be able to expand your chances of actually being able to hit target. So the way that we typically have a look at all of this data as well, just to give you another insight with CustomerLabs, is we collect all the UTM data, and CustomerLabs then stores it. We then send it off into our data warehouse. So we use BigQuery, then we send it into Looker, and then we visualize everything. By using strict naming conventions, we're then able to then start putting together like a hypothesis on what's performing well, what's performing badly. For example, is like obviously images, videos, carousel collection, like that's stage 1. So they'll always be in the ad name. Stage 2 will always be in the ad name. Stage 3, which are the hooks and the angles, they'll also be in there. Then we'll use the button. We'll also use the landing page code, just in case we're testing different landing pages. Like all of them things then allow us to be able to build up a good bank of insights on what's successful and why. So then we've got, like this is just an example, just to be able to show you that we have got this data inside of our Looker reports. So what's the impact of the style of the ad? You've got UGC and natural, which will appear in there. This is actually for a slightly different account, not car finance, where we actually get sent back revenue data. And yeah, ad type, and then even the button. So you can see we've spent a lot of money on ads which haven't got a button. But the return on ad spend is small compared to get a quote. So the media buyer on this would be looking at that, thinking, right, let's get rid of any no button related ads and instead getting them get a quote maybe. So yeah, that is creatives basically. So if there's any questions that you've got on that, again, just ping me after and I will happily answer anything. Google Ads, same principles as Meta in terms of the first party data. It's actually quite interesting recently. We had a scenario on one of our car finance clients where when we inherited the account, we didn't fully understand how their tracking was set up. Like we couldn't isolate where their Google tag conversion ID was actually set, and they couldn't give us access to their tag manager because it was owned by somebody else. So it was a real mess, and it was quite difficult for us to be able to get our heads around. And what ended up happening was the event on that page ended up getting taken down by whoever for whatever reason. And what ended up happening was all of that event conversion data then started getting lost because we were reliant on web browser event firstly. This is prior to us actually implementing first party data. So we were reliant on just the Google Ads pixel script inside the browser. And then what ends up happening with Google is like they learn off 30 days worth of data. So the second that you throw things out, we use target CPAs typically instead of like we'll use max CPC on a new account, but then as the account matures, we'll then start using target CPAs. And if you've only got target CPAs inside the account and then there's no conversions which are actually showing inside the UI, Google then stops spending because it can't find the conversions. It took us, I think, about 6 to 8 weeks to be able to go back to the level of ad spend that we were already on. But for our clients, like that's massive, like because they need to hit minimum lead volume, minimum approval volume just to keep the sales floor happy. So like that was a real struggle and it was a real lesson for us about a year ago probably. So obviously now we've got enhanced conversions, we've got all of the server-side events set up, the consent mode is activated. So we've got all of that. So that was a big lesson from Google. Like my background personally is in paid social. I haven't scaled many Google accounts, but yeah, like that was like a really, really big learning curve for me as well, because I've never seen that before. I've ran Google accounts, I've worked alongside the Google team. Never have I seen spend go down that drastically, all due to that conversion event disappearing. So again, just make sure that you've got to process your side as an agency or a freelancer, whatever you are, that you've got like a tick box next to all the different things that you need, like Google Tag Manager, consent mode, enhanced conversions? Are you testing different, even revenue amounts? So we're starting to test value-based bidding quite a lot. So you want to make sure that you've just ticked off all them boxes. In terms of how we actually set up our campaign structure, so it's a broad question as budgets, industry, and targets all come into play. Google's a little bit more sensitive and we can't be as aggressive. Like paid social, we can set an ad live, we can set a campaign up at like £1,500 per day immediately from the get-go. With a brand new Google account, which hasn't got any historic data, that we're starting on max CPC because we have to get spend away in order to be able to get the data to learn. Like we run the risk then of just getting a really expensive cost per lead and approval and stuff. So the sensitivity of running things like this is a lot more. So once we actually get that 30 days worth of data, if we've got a considerable amount because we're actually spending decent budgets, we'll then transition over to target CPA. Then we'll typically divide out campaigns into each of their own categories. So if it's car finance, it could be like bad credit or good credit or competitors or like generic. And then match types. This has been quite an interesting one to watch over time. Like we used to just always stay away from broad. Like broad targeting never worked. There was just no point in us ever running it. Now that their machine learning is getting better and that their algorithms changing, we're actually now seeing that broad matches actually starts to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. Obviously, to make all your names, but yeah, that is match types. So again, we test that. So we use all of our naming conventions to be able to pull this data out with the actual back-end data. And just so you understand, our back-end data, we don't just get the lead data back from the client. We get given the approval, the transfer, the deal, the whole lot. So when we are analyzing this data, we can then obviously make sure, like, is the match type exact going to be better than the match type broad in relation to cost per approval, maybe. From an optimization standpoint, yeah, typically what we'll do is we'll send our approved data into our event that we're actually targeting, which is then going to help us be able to then actually reach new people. And yeah, again, we will never use transfer or deal typically, primarily because it just takes too long to be able to get there, basically. And when we're actually looking from an optimization standpoint on both paid social and on Google, in my opinion, that the day-to-day optimizations are critical for an account, especially when you start spending big budgets. What I mean by this is switching ads on and off at the right time, moving budgets at the right time, adding in new keywords or ads or negative, not negative, negatives should be done daily as well. All of these things then actually become critical for the success of our accounts. And seasonality as well. So we've got to be careful because it's like we had a client once who turned around to us and said, "Oh, keyword, I don't know what it was, but car finance, let's say hypothetically, had a cost per deal of like, I think it was like £1,200. And the client was like, we've got to switch that off, but they wanted to maintain market share. So we've also got to consider if we reduce spend or if we turn off a keyword, you're then going to lose impression share on some of your on some of those terms. And when we end up looking into the data, because we knew it was December, we actually looked November, October, September, August. It was its best performing keyword. It was purely because it was seasonality, which ended up making the results go poor. So we told the client, look, it is expensive. We agree. You still need some volume trickling through, let's keep it on, because if we switch it off, it could impact things then rolling into the following month. And then the following month, January, which was usually our client's best performing month, that keyword once again then just flew. If we turned it off, then we would have run into some issues later down the line. So Meta, you can kind of get away with optimizing based on last 3, 7. Usually I'll go by last 3 or 7 days. But Google, you kind of want to be looking at like a 30, 60, 90-day window, just to make sure that we're actually considering the intent, because keywords have intent behind them. Obviously, ad delivery is usually impacted by like the first 1,500 impressions that Facebook delivers your ad to. You could have you've probably all had this headache as well, but you could have the best performing ad inside of an account. You duplicate it and then it performs terribly. So there's just like Google, you just have to consider more before making a decision. Facebook, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive. So I just touched on value-based bidding, and we do test this a little bit. And it is like when we went down to Google HQ the other day, they said to us to really start doubling down on it, because it's something which they're really, really focusing on. It's been mixed results, not that impressive, not anything near compared to like the sales campaign for Advantage Plus on Facebook. But what we do is we use static amounts, because it's quite hard like you can't send back a value a lead, because it doesn't happen until the payout, until you know what the revenue is. So lead and approved, we look at £1 and £20 and then £500. I'd recommend testing it, because I think Google will slowly move us over to there. Facebook's also introducing some bidding for like whatever your margin is, so you can bid £35 if your margin is £35 on a lead, similar to ROAS bidding. But it's definitely one to put on your radar for Google, especially. This is where consent mode should have been. So consent mode, just make sure that you've got it set up properly, because that's going to really dictate what you actually end up doing with the account, because it's going to become 100%. Everything's going to be needed to have a consent mode. If it doesn't, then you're not going to be able to receive the data. If you don't receive the data, Google UI will not know what's going on. And I know CustomerLabs have got some clever features to be able to actually make consent mode more appealing from an advertising perspective. Again, just to give you an example on Google, like this is just a report from the back end on Google spending month on month. This is over the 12 months of last year. Went from 0 spend down here. The client had previously rang Google, and yeah, it was super expensive, so we didn't want to do it again. But we said, look, it does work, let us run it. And you can see, like, now it's their biggest channel. It's taken over Facebook, which I may feel a little bit disappointed about, because I'm the one that's scaling the Facebook account. But Google's much higher intent. There's a lot more predictability, and the average order values are so much higher because of the nature of Google. So it obviously makes more sense for us to put more budget in there. But by doing all the things which I've already been speaking about on the last couple of pages, so value-based bidding didn't really come into it, that's more this year. But the optimizations, like if I ever see an account where the media buyers haven't been in the account at least once, if they're spending like more than probably £300 per day, they should be in there daily. Like there should be something which has happened. I can't really see a situation where you haven't. Like even to the point where, let's say you've only got one ad live on Google, let's say, for a particular keyword or ad group. I'd never only ever have one ad. I have to have more than one ad live. Because to me, it's risk mitigation. Because if that ad now starts to fatigue for whatever reason, I need to have a backup in there to be able to help diversify what we're actually running. Similar on Meta. Like if I ever see accounts with just one campaign, one ad set, one ad, I'll go insane, because it's just risky long term. Short term, yeah, you could argue we're hitting the 50 conversions needed, we're giving everything Facebook needs. But what happens when it fatigues? We've had accounts in the past where the second that some ads or some keywords have started to fatigue, we haven't ever been able to claw it back. and that then becomes an issue. So that is fundamentally how we scale Google. Like, in my opinion, the fundamentals are kind of everything for an account. When we hire somebody to come and work for us, like, some people come in and they've got all these great tactics and little hacks that maybe they found on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever. Like, I used to do that quite a lot, and prior to iOS 14, you used to be able to get away with it a little bit. Used to be able to trick the pixel into understanding like different types of people. Used to be able to do all sorts of black hat and white hat sort of strategies. But to be honest, I don't really care about them as much now, because there's so much outside of our control when it comes to lead gen. We just want to make sure that the platform's happy. Platform's getting everything that it needs to be able to leverage the machine learning off the back of it. If there are any sort of tactics which are against the like recommendations, they might get banned in the future, and then our account could then get impacted. Like, if we're doing a redirect URL and we're hiding a particular endpoint for an e-commerce brand that's selling, I don't know, some sort of prohibited product in the UK, like, that's also going to be an issue now as well, because like, it's just not scalable. So we need to make sure that we're doing the fundamentals, we're doing everything which the channels want us to do, and then we just keep on rinsing and repeating it. It sounds boring sometimes. Like, I appreciate some people may have come here thinking I'm going to share some sort of miraculous strategy. I can share strategies or tactics which maybe do work in some capacity, but if you're not doing the fundamentals, it's never going to work. Again, like, we've had clients stay for 3 years. I'd like to think that we're in a position now where we kind of can say that we are quite good at what we do, and that's not me, that is my team. My team of, like, I've sort of stopped media buying, if it were, probably about 6 months ago, a little bit less, because I've got team members underneath me now that are slowly becoming vastly better than me at advertising as well. And even now, like, they're just doing the basics, like, what creative's working, what type, what style, what's the angle and hook, what's the best paying customer for this particular type of client. Let's go and have a look at all their back end data. Oh yeah, it's a female who's 35 plus, bad credit, lives up in the north part of the UK. Like, we can then tailor our advertising around that. Like, marketing, in my opinion, should be centered around the customer, not around the tactics or doing anything to be able to aggressively scale, because that doesn't really ever work long term. And as I said right back at the very beginning, I think, like, cheap leads doesn't equal profitability. So great, you've got a lead gen campaign up. If you're running lead gen and you're getting a cheap cost per lead and you're being paid per lead, for example, which is a model which we use, the client's still going to leave if they're not actually getting any paying customers. So again, like, that's all vanity metrics. That's why I kind of like roll my eyes whenever I look on LinkedIn, and then I can see that people are sharing, like, oh yeah, I've got a return of ad spend of 12x. Great. Give me the context behind it. What's the actual expenses of the client? What do they actually need to be breaking? What's their marketing efficiency ratio? What's all the numbers which you're not sharing with me look like, before I then praise you for doing something amazing? Same with lead gen. Like, I could easily share campaigns which have got £5 cost per lead, but I guarantee you they're not profitable. So if you're running multiple channels at scale, more than 50k per month, like, you need to have a more scientific approach. I would recommend looking into marketing mix modeling, especially if the client is then doing a lot of non-digital marketing activities. So if they've got billboards or TV or newspapers, radio, etc., that will then start to help you make more educated assumptions on where your returns are being seen. Once you're at that point, like, once you get to about 50k per month per channel, like, I can still see an argument quite strongly for, you can still just do direct response advertising, last click, based on for lead gen anyway. up to about 100k, maybe even 200k per month. But the bigger ones, like, you need to now start considering the first click and last click, which obviously CustomerLabs helps you be able to implement marketing mix modeling for those that are relevant to that. And that is it. So yeah, like, you can add me on LinkedIn. It's just Luke Nevill. You'll probably see Friends with Vish, and probably follow CustomerLabs on there. Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for today, and appreciate your time, and just give me a shout if you need anything. Thank you very much.